Hello, this is Traci Harrell, and I am so excited today. I am here with Andy Wappler. I'm gonna say the Andy Wappler. Is that okay?
It's
The
okay
Andy.
and ridiculous. Yeah.
So the truth is, I didn't know who you were. I don't know that you had some 15-year history in this town. Patricia's like, oh my God, if you could Andy, that would be awesome. And I'm like, he's a nice guy. I agree, but she's like, he's kind of famous. So you're kind of famous. Tell me more.
Well, yeah, famous in my own home, maybe. Um, my dad actually, Harry, started on TV here in 1969.
Wow, I was
Doing
born in 1969, 50 years ago.
kids. So he started then when I was like a 5-year old, and he started then, and then I followed him, and I was at Cairo from 1994 to 2008. And then have been at Puget Energy since then. So, we've been lucky enough to be in the community 50 or so years. And just, through that presence, you just kind of get to be a bit of an every neighbor. And it's actually one of the nicest things to me is, we'll be someplace and it's not like it's a big deal to people, but they'll say, hey, I remember your dad or whatever. And it's nice, especially, our community gets so big. Sometimes it feels very anonymous. It's just kind of cool when you run into people who say, whatever, they remember something about the weather, or they remember, yeah, your dad came to my kid's school 20 years ago, or it's nice,
I,
and
I
then the
think
people like Patricia that my dad worked with at Cairo, and you just find all those little connections all over the place all the time.
so. I think you're being a little shy. Oh, my dad this and my dad that. Apparently, Andy Wappler has made a name for himself. So I went online and I did Google you, by the way.
Uh-oh.
I did. And I looked up. So they had this amazing Cairo farewell for you. And they showed all these amazing, cute little clips of you just being so authentic and funny and engaging. And then all the people, writing about you in these articles. I'm thinking, like, I've only had a taste of Andy, but I love you already. So thank you for
Thank
your
you.
commitment to the community and honestly, thank you for just being you. Thank you for being an authentic guy who's, I'm going to say, this is the term I like to use, in it to win it.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, really awesome to get to meet you through this. And it's one of the best things to me about being involved in Tabor and other things. They're outside of your own circle. You just, boy, you stay in your own box, you're missing a lot in life. You're missing a lot for yourself. You're missing a lot of opportunities to contribute. And it does us all good to broaden our circle, see things differently. Um, you can say you're in it for the community. The secret is you get a lot out of it. And I think maybe people who don't do it don't realize that.
Yes, I love you. It's almost like you're a plant and you really are not a plant. But I love what you just said. Like, totally. This work, it's like my mission in life is to connect with others. And really this initiative that we have you on talking about today is this bigger than me success series, achieving racial equity and inclusion in business, education, wealth, and health. It's a mouthful.
A lot.
But
But
basically,
uh,
did you get it? What does that mean to you when you heard it? What did you think?
I think it really communicates a couple of things. One, that you can't pull any of the threads out. Someone, are they going to be happy if they don't have the economic opportunities they want? Well, maybe money's not everything. On the other hand, if you can't pay the bills or you're wondering how you can do this for your kids, that's hard to do. I also think the inclusion and the sense of opportunity and the sense of connectedness, um, yeah, we all like our moments alone. On the other hand, feeling forgotten, that doesn't really work for you either. So to me, the fact, yeah, it's a mouthful, but the reality is all those people's pieces are interrelated, and you can't see one of those pieces failing and feel like the others are really going to work out well. They might for a bit, but I think we're kidding ourselves if we see our own happiness, prosperity, opportunity as independent from anybody else's. Uh,
Mm,
Maybe it's not your problem today. It will be. It will.
wow. Wow. Wow.
Well, I don't know. It just goes back to this to me the thing of if you had a lovely house and yet you look at the houses on either side of you on the street and they're not doing too well, you're like, Really? How's that going to work out for you?
Exactly.
Not
I
well.
like that. I love that. Property value.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
just
It's a
quality of your
human
neighborhood.
value.
It's human
Exactly.
value. It's
It's
everything else.
there you go.
Yeah, and I just believe, people, we will all do better when everybody's doing better. And
Mm.
that to me, when I think about, especially in recent times, and we've seen things like income inequality and just everything else, I just think you're a fool if you don't think, if you're doing well and you don't think that will catch up to you. I think you're a fool. I really do.
Mm. Wow. Wow. I didn't you're not a plant, but boy do you sound like one. Wow, I love that. Okay. So Andy, part of the reason I wanted to interview you again was to introduce you to, I was going to say introduce you to this concept, but it sounds like you know more about this concept than I do. You just said a more deep and explosive assessment of what I'm doing and why. It's because it's all connected. I love it. Wow.
Well, I love your title. You're talking about it bigger than me because it really is, and um, I think most people get that. I think most people find they are happier when other people are doing well. I think it truly is. It's better to give than receive. I think people really get that. Um, and I think part of it is sometimes people fear, in the case of if you're working on issues of racial equity, um, you don't want to step in, you don't want to say the wrong thing, you don't want your actions to be incorrect, to be perceived incorrectly. On the other hand, if you keep uh, all those barriers from stopping you, well, then you're not actually helping. So, step
Wow.
in, take a risk, and try and help out, knowing that no one person probably can solve everything, and that you'll probably have times when, uh, yeah, maybe just listen a bit more.
Mm, wow.
So that's
Well,
the guy who's just been talking a lot, but
I, I'm so glad. I mean, I sent you a few questions just so you would feel comfortable about what we're going to talk about, and I haven't asked you any of them, um, which
fire away.
is which is interesting. But what I love about this conversation is just a conversation. Three things you just said that I have to now kind of piggyback on. So first thing you said was, people are going to be uncomfortable, likely afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing. Um, I am sure going to say the wrong thing. And I heard you say, just get in, just get involved. So this is a 6-part series. I think I mentioned this to you before. It's the Bigger Than Me Success Series, Achieving Racial Equity and Inclusion in Business, Education, Wealth, and Health. And to your point, it's about systems change. And we've built this initiative on 3 key pillars. One is positive psychology, right? And we know what research proves around positive psychology. Thinking positively, being positive will lead to positive outcomes. By definition, there's a positivity bias that says if your intent is such that you want good things to happen, and that's what you see, the law of attraction, all those things, right? Tons of research in every aspect of life would say that positive in, positive out, right? Right.
Yeah,
Thoughts become things. Good thoughts become good things, right? Would you agree with that? Any comment on that
no,
as a foundational principle?
I completely agree with it, and I don't know why it's taking me back to being a kid and playing little league baseball. I was always really afraid of the ball. I was always afraid it was going to hit me, and trust me, that negative attitude meant I never got a hit. You just have to be. You see, great athletes are a wonderful example because it's so obvious. Yeah, the good ones, they're up, they're ready to go, they think they're going to succeed every time, and they do. And it's one of the most dramatic examples we can see because it's right there in front of you. The good ones that are confident when they come to the plate or go to throw the ball, they do well, they're confident. Me in little league, afraid of ball, did not do well. So yeah, I think that positive factor and that expectations, it puts you in a position to recover from failure, to seek opportunity, to give that little extra effort, all those things. And if you don't have that, and you don't have that sense of, yeah, but if I just keep going, you know
I I love that. I got to tell you, I played softball the way I live life, I was all in. I was all in. Before I even knew how to play, I was a designated hitter because I didn't care if I got hit by the ball. And let me just show something to you. This is me being a little courageous. You know how some people have a beautiful face and they can go, like women can go with really short hair. I have this huge forehead that is ridiculous, right? And so if I played softball, I was so in. I used to play second base. I got hit with a line drive right in my forehead. So you know how Klingons have that look? I had the imprint of the ball right here on my head. But you know what? We won that game, and I don't know what my hair is doing right now, but I just had to share that. I was all in. I got a base hit every time, and not many balls went past me. And if that meant I was going to be a Klingon for about a week and a half, it broke the skin. I had the
Wow.
whole lines. Oh yeah. So I was in. So it sounds like even though in Little League you were a little skittish,
No, not yeah, and that kind of thing.
but
No
right
way.
now,
Yeah.
but right now,
Well,
you're like
I am,
all in. You don't even know what Tracy's gonna do. Tracy's unpredictable. You barely know what I'm gonna do, but you're like, hey, let's do this. I'm in.
and I think it's very hard. And truthfully, I think it's very hard um, to step into the conversation on racial equity if you're white and not feel like I'm being really presumptuous. I'm being paternalistic. I'm being just ignorant. But if you don't step in, you're a spectator, and it's too big a moment to be a spectator. But
Wow.
that challenge of stepping in, I really appreciate the fact that in this, as I worked with you, other people from Tabor, other friends of mine from outside in life, um, getting over your own hesitations and realizing, yeah, you'll be welcomed. Help out the same way I would be if I had an issue and somebody came to help me. I would appreciate that. So,
Wow.
but there's
Wow.
hesitancy there, I think, but it's just obviously a moment when, to quote, "You're bigger than me." It's get over your own ego. It's bigger. Jump in.
I love that. I can't even tell you how much I love that. And I think there's a bit of trust that has to come with it. So I mentioned the three pillars of this process, the three pillars of this initiative. The first one was positive psychology. And we both agree being in, just going in, assuming the best, you're going to get better outcomes. No matter what happens, you're going to get better
Yeah.
right? The second one is this concept of adaptive leadership. And adaptive leadership has a few fundamental principles, one of which is being willing to learn in public. This concept of creating a safe space and every voice matters. So you just mentioned the concept of people are going to be a little hesitant, probably a little shy, not quite sure, if they got the right thing to say. No one does. That's the whole point. This is the journey. We're documenting the journey, and really just being in is the win.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to say it. And one one of the things that was funny thinking about when I was doing television or when my dad was, you had to get if you're a weather forecaster, you have to get pretty comfortable with being wrong publicly, like a lot. So maybe that helps me a little bit of just like, really, it snowed. Who knew it was going to snow? Not me. So getting comfortable with that, but. Yeah, I think it's too compelling of a moment um, to not step up.
Not to sit on the sidelines. You're in. So it's really interesting. So I mentioned that there's 6 sessions, right? There's it's a 6 session series. The first one was on 7/7. Then there was one on 8/8. The one that's coming up is 9/9, then 10/10, 11/11, and 12/12. So I put the dates pretty simple to make them easy to remember, of 2020. And so if we've had 2 sessions already, we've done a recap from sessions 7/7, and the focus on 7/7 was around basically creating a case for change. And the concept of a case for change is basically to identify that there is, in addition to us watching George Floyd and others get murdered on national television, specifically George, where there was no question from beginning to end that was 8 minutes of terror, right? So
Yeah.
we witnessed that. I think a lot of people were like, really? Did that really just happen? So I think it was a bit of an awakening for this country who was kind of silent, you know, because of COVID-19, and then you have this thing happening, and it was transformational, transformative. It was a catalyst in so many different ways. It was a
It,
wake up call that not only is that same thing happening, the same type of terror that's happening in the streets of America as it relates to police brutality, but we're basically saying the same thing happens in business and education and wealth and health. And so I'm kind of focusing on the business aspect because I think it's honestly one of the easiest. We have people coming in talking about health and wealth and other. I wouldn't dare tackle police brutality because there's just so many municipalities, the state and the federal and the local, it's just, and I don't have any expertise there either, right? Many other people are doing that work, but I think being able to shine a light that there's a problem with systemic racism in the country, right? That it shows up everywhere, and in business is one of those areas where we have a lot of control. Like, the CEO has some accountability. Every employee, every manager, every leader, we show up. How we show up is what defines the culture. So when you think about what happened versus that thing translates to these other systemic racism highlights that I guess we can now address and tackle. How do you bridge that gap? How do you think about those two things? That was a lot.
yeah, but I think well, think about something I've heard from Ollie Garrett several times. She just a couple weeks ago spontaneously was kind of going through a riff of black jobs and what they do, and black jobs and what they do, and it was very, they change lives, they open educational opportunities, they keep families together, they keep people from being homeless, they keep people from so many different things where you really, you can't deny that in some cases money is the root of all evil. We know that. On the other hand, boy, does a paycheck change a lot of things, for the positive. So I think the reason we need to focus on employment and employment opportunities and paychecks is so many of the other things we're dealing with in society are kind of downstream of that moment. So it's a chance to go as far upstream into the cycle as you can. And I think probably maybe it's a tie, a chicken or the egg of education and paycheck. Maybe they're kind of a tie, but boy,
Totally.
you go to that point, and all of a sudden, so many of the other things that really matter, maybe they get easier to solve, or maybe they're just not as prevalent. So that to me is why I think it's so valuable. If we can help focus on workplace opportunities, workplace equity, pay equity, whatever it may be, there's just so many things that are goodness then that flow out of that,
Mm.
and fewer problems them on the downstream that we have to deal with. And we'll still have to deal with them, but boy, the further up you can go in that cycle and get some goodness and get the virtuous cycle, not the vicious cycle, it just seems, just if you did it from an investment standpoint, it's the best place to put the dollar. But also, I think it's the best place to create that kind of positivity and success and opportunity that there's just so much momentum there. The kid that grows up in a house with a paycheck, that kid has more opportunities. Their kid has more opportunities, on and on and on. And then it helps everyone. Hey, you're going to open a new business. Well, if you're opening a new business to the community with lots of paychecks, you're probably going to do better. And just it goes on and on that way. So I just think the multiplier effect is so, so great. And I would also say in our region today, we have been so prosperous overall as a region. Um, I don't think there's the awareness of really the difficulty that um, Black entrepreneurs, minority entrepreneurs, others necessarily face, because we've just had so much prosperity in our region, but it's not necessarily even-handed.
Well, we have all kind of metrics that would say yes, you are absolutely correct on that. But what I love about you is, again, we've done some sessions where we talked about the numbers and the metrics, et cetera. I'm going to do one more, just one more, because we're going to be halfway through after 9/9. So I'm going to do one other deep dive on my Sunday show. I do a live show every Sunday called Bigger Than Me. It's on KKNW from 2 to 4 p.m. It was 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Now it's 2 to 4 because I needed more time. Did I mention I have a book that launched? I have a lot of stuff happening in addition to my diversity and inclusion work. So I needed a little bit more time. So
You need
we're
to
going to
get
do.
busy.
God help me. So what's exciting is we got another 2 hour session where we're going to focus on the numbers. So I think some people really need the numbers. When I say the first session on 7/7 focused on a call a case for change, right? Like a call to action, but really like there really are challenges. And here are the numbers. If you really don't believe it, if you just think it's that, here's some information. So we're going to do one more. We got a disparity study. Someone from Rex Brown from the governor's office is actually part of this Bigger Than Me movement. So he's going to come with one of the disparity studies. There's some other community leaders that have other, Regina referred me to 5 that's I guess already done from Seattle or King County, et cetera, some older ones. I think the governor's office has one of the newer ones. So long story short, we're going to bring in all this data. We did a think tank for Black MBA. That's actually what got me probably more spark than anything. When I spent 25 years in corporate America. Like I said, 8 years at IBM, 14 years at Disney, my last 5 at Microsoft. And I literally worked, New York, North Carolina, 2 international assignments, one in Mexico City, one in Rio, Brazil. So corporate
Wow.
America was kind of my space, right? It's kind of my thing. I grew up relatively poor. So for a Black girl, it's like, hey, I did well in school. You go get a job in corporate America, the bigger the better, and you make it happen. I did that work. I also did work in volunteer work, I guess you would call it, as a part of the National Black MBA Association. My first internship with IBM was because someone from Black MBA went to the University of Florida and said, oh, no one in my family went to college. I didn't know anything about internships. I was just smart girl, thank God, and was in college, right? But I didn't know internship leads to, a job. And so someone from the Black MBA, the National Black MBA Association, came and did some presentation, and I was the only Black person in my business classes, finance classes at UF.
Yeah.
So it was a small room with me and the it was a one-on-one discussion basically. But it was really insightful. So I learned, things that no one in my family would have known because we didn't go to college, right? And I was the first one in my family to really have that experience. And so what's exciting is we're able to talk about the numbers. We're able to talk about organizations that are doing the work. But really what's important is, people like you getting involved, right? So we
Well,
can't have a bunch of Black people talking to ourselves, right? We got to bring in allies and people that don't look like us, that are influencers that can really help to change the status quo. That's why this is
well,
so important.
I totally agree. I also think, though, from my standpoint, I have probably over the years had many conversations with my white friends about, gee, why things should be different and what ought to be done. Well, it probably doesn't help me a ton to be just having that conversation in that circle either. The other thing is, you mentioned, think about, I have 2 kids who are now in college, and what it takes for them to get there. They're in college. I went, my wife went, my parents went, her parents went. I mean, so you can't know about what to do or what the possibilities even are if you're not exposed to. How would you possibly know? And I think that component is critical. And one of the things I'm really excited about, the work now that we're trying to do with Tabor around the Black Business Equity Fund, is
Yes.
get companies to contribute dollars, but then also bring your people to the TED Hub. Make that a place where you have meetings. Make that a place where you offer mentors, or you have some seminars from subject matter experts about, I don't know, anything from tax to marketing. People need to meet and talk. People need to meet and talk. And if we all just read newspaper articles in our own home and go, man, that's really bad.
So I love that.
And
I love that.
I've spent 55 years of my life reading an article and going, man, that is really bad. Well, that's nice that I think that, but what's the step you can take to make it different? And I think that in your series, as you've talked about, kind of you want more voices in that, because if it's the same people talking to each other and having the same conversation, every family calls that Thanksgiving, and we've all had that conversation over and over again. It kind of feels the same every year, and that's where things really need to be different. I mean, that's hopefully that's where this moment can take us, because unfortunately, beyond George Floyd, you can go back a lot of years. Trayvon Martin, Amadou Diallo. You can go back many, many years and many, many names. The moment passed every time.
You know what? Again, this is such an impromptu conversation. I will get to one of my written questions at some point in time, but I'm liking this. I'm liking this flow of the conversation. But you just mentioned Trayvon Martin. So I didn't mention I'm from Florida. Florida girl, born in Florida, born in Orlando, went to the University of Florida for both my undergraduate degree, my MBA as well, 2 master's level degrees. So education was my way out. right? And I was in Orlando. I was in Florida when the Trayvon Martin situation happened. My best friend, who has a single mom, who has a son about his age, lived less than 5 minutes from him. So when I say all the marches, all the whatevers, the whole situation, his parents were there, and it was such an interesting time because they basically, demanded no, like this must be peaceful in my son's honor. It was like a very different thing. Nothing changed, but except I can tell you a community, and I read this. This was a Harvard article. A lot of research has been done around when these inequities occur. It is not just about that family, and it's not just about that community. Generations are impacted because what the message says is you're not valuable. You don't matter.
Yeah.
So this whole initiative, part of this initiative, lovingly, positive psychology, adaptive leadership. So ensuring that it's positive, ensuring that everyone feels comfortable, that their voice matters. Self-directed learning is the third piece because it's really about how do we connect, make people want to go deeper and want to learn more. But at the end of the day, the you know the change is it's about each of us deciding that we want to do something different, that we're willing to get active, to engage, to activate, to I feel like we're like concentric circles. Like my black community and your white community simply needs to come together. There needs to be some overlap in this conversation, which is why we're focused. The first session was on the call to action. Second session was around, how do we really change things, the concept of storytelling, et cetera, the value of, we got to a number of different topics around community responsibility, corporate responsibility, CEO accountability, individual accountability. So all those topics were covered in the second session on 8/8. And this session is really focused on change. It's focused on champions, accountability, advocacy, and allies. Those are the 5 topics that we're addressing. So, in the first session, I had a bunch of polls set up, and it was 90-something% black people. I was like, we are talking to ourselves. We can
Yeah.
hold on the polls. Second session, it was around 80-something black people, 85% black people. I'm like, okay, that's better. This particular session, Andy, I need you to bring you up. This is a calling all white people moment.
I will do what I can. And
Calling all white people to the table.
yeah, and the hard thing is just um, you don't want to show up and act like you know it all. You don't want to show up and commit the same errors that have caused things to be the way they are. At the same time, I feel compelled to show up. So I really appreciate being asked. I'm nervous about it.
You tell me more. Tell me more, because I think other people are going to be nervous too, just coming. So let's talk about your nervousness, and you still came. You still stepped up to the plate, and being in is the win. Showing up
Well,
is enough at this point in the journey.
well, and here's the ridiculous thing about me being nervous.
Yeah.
I am nervous about in the Zoom world of looking at all the squares on the Zoom and being one of, if not the only person who looks like me.
That's my life, Andy. Welcome to my world.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's where whenever I am in that position, I just stop and I really realize and try and realize, yeah, that's in many cases reality for people of color all the time. And yeah, isn't that ludicrous? that for me, it's like I'm afraid of that.
That's
Really?
all. Well, let
Yeah.
me put you to a little bit of rest. It's not a Zoom meeting; it's a webinar, so you won't see
There
all
you
the
go.
faces. He's like, "Well, thank God for that." No,
Yeah. But
there may be other sessions where if we will invite you to that, but this particular one is a webinar, and I can tell you why. A couple of reasons why. We hosted several sessions, and we were getting racially hacked. Like, if I could tell you, we had one session like in the beginning of the COVID thing, and one of the leaders I'm president of the Seattle chapter of the National Black MBA Association. There's 40 chapters around the nation. The president of the Chicago chapter. So this is a national initiative because all the presidents are involved, and our national president is involved. You got people from the board, So it's a national initiative for Black MBA. But the Chicago president actually had started. she hosted a national power hour of prayer for the National Black MBA Association, all chapters. And it was like, how can we, now we're a professional organization. There's some conflict even just to be praying,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But we were like, all the leaders were like, it's a voluntary, you come if you want to come. But we felt like there was an opportunity for prayer to bring, some peace and some, comfort. Black people have always prayed in the middle of shenanigans, right? So it's like we need Jesus clearly. So we hosted this prayer session. Andy, I almost tear up every time I think about it. Honestly, I have to fight back the tears, and I'm going to choke myself up right now. It was so horrible. We were racially. It was a hate crime. Like, we were racially hacked. I saw things that I don't think my eyes were meant to see. I mean, from nigga, 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 just saying, from the sound being overtaken in the middle of pastors praying to the visual screens. I'm going to laugh right now, but the visuals that were put up there, my eyes will never unsee some of those things. I'm just telling you, it was horrible. Horrible. The last session we had on 8/8, by the way, I was hacked again, but unfortunately, at the time, we pulled this prayer session together so fast, it was a Zoom meeting. Right, so you had some controls in place, but it wasn't a webinar, right? I had hosted our last session on 8/8 as a webinar. We were still hacked. I watched my screen. I watched somebody take over my screen, and it was doing some weird things. And I talked about it for the first 10 minutes. I'm like, hey, guys, if something happens to my screen, just keep going. They had a clear run of show. Just keep going. I watched my little mouse go up and click on end meeting. It didn't end the
Wow.
meeting. It didn't end the meeting for everyone because I wasn't the host. I was a co-host, right? We had someone else managing the videos, but it kicked me out. And then my honey's a tech guy, so he came in, he found the person, kicked him out of the meeting. This is a webinar with all the Zoom protocols in place. So some people don't want us to do this work, right? It is not, right? It's sad.
It's horrible, and I think there's where the middle, I'll call it, needs to rise up. And I think when you think about how divided our country could be today, and most people aren't really on those poles, they're in the middle, but it's hard to be in the middle and feel like you want to participate because you look at it and you say, wow, this is kind of rough out there. I don't know if I want to participate. I think if enough in the middle steps in, that's always been, I think, the thing that sort of stops the bully is there just enough other people around them on the playground that they realize, okay, I kind of can't beat up everybody who's here. I can beat up that one. I'll beat up that one kid, but I can't beat up everybody. And that's why I think the participation, whether it's at a big level or a small level, modest level, whatever, is so important because the middle that really, I think in this country wants solutions around so many things, but is afraid to step in. And I think that's where the middle has to, because I think that's the only answer to take the bully on the extreme and put them in their place by showing that,
Mm,
dude, you are so outnumbered. You
I
are
love
so
that.
outnumbered. And that's where I think widening the circles and wider participation is important. The trouble is when people see those moments, they say, I don't know if I want to do that. But you gotta, you
Right.
know, it's hard to look at a moment like this now and not think it's a historic moment and then think, all right, in 10, 20 years, your grandchild says, well, what'd you do?
What did you do? Right.
I was afraid to participate. Yeah.
Not Andy Wappler.
Well,
He stepped up to the plate and has already hit a home run. This is a bigger than me, not bigger than this is a bigger than me moment for sure. But it's also, I call this it's a Pretty Woman moment. You remember that scene when they're in the elevator and she's like, I've already had a good time. You remember that scene?
I do.
This is a Pretty Woman moment for me right now. Like, you've already stepped up to the plate. You've already hit a home run. You haven't done anything but talk to me and say and give me some, comfort that there are others who don't look like me, who believe in positive psychology, that we can make a difference and we really can be a part of change. So, thank you.
Well, I'm honored to. I appreciate your leadership and others, and I think people are. This has been a hard time for everybody. I mean, pandemic, the whole thing. One of the ways I think people can feel better is by, okay, step in, participate, and do something. And I think it's good for everybody when they can.
Yeah.
It's hard to feel good about a lot of things these days. So okay, get in, just do something and
Right.
feel like you're, a little more positive than just hunkering down.
I love that. And just to clarify, one of the things you said, this is you kind of have some rules of engagement. So adaptive leadership is about making, uh, I was going to say making everyone feel comfortable, but it's really about, being willing to be uncomfortable, but it's being comfortable in that every voice matters. So I've created something. Tell me what you think about this. I just
Okay.
made it up. It's called actually, it's like my little thing here. I got this a while ago. It's like a purple amethyst. So I started the party of purple. There's no red and there's no blue in this space. It's the party of purple. This bigger than me movement is politically agnostic. We are focused on the things that we can agree on. We don't care about the things that we disagree on. That's not even a point of consideration. We're the human race. We're not the black race. We're the human race. We're all, descendants of Mother Earth. And so we're coming in a loving, kind space of, again, with the party of purple. So what do you think about that?
I like that, and I think that's kind of the thing I was going to be doing, getting that middle to rise up. And I think it's hard for people to feel like they want to, because the civic conversation on so many things these days is brutal, and it's on all kinds of things. And I think the problem is we won't get anywhere until we get more participation in that middle. And so, if everybody in effect could just take one step forward, that's a big movement.
I
But I
love it.
like the
I
I
love
like
it.
the party of the purple, and I think today, not surprisingly, people feel reluctant to step into that divide because it
Right.
just feels like a scary place.
Right. Well, I ask you to talk to your white people and let them know it is a loving, kind, safe space. It's a webinar, so you won't be looking at yourself. We will know because we are asking for demographic information when people come in, just so we know like who we're talking to. So like one of the first polls, actually, when in registration we may ask, but then one of the polls we actually ask. So we kind of want to know, right? Just so we know if it's 95% Black people, I don't need to do a poll because I think I know where most of us stand. But if there's a mix, then there's an opportunity to really have a interesting conversation. And we want people to lovingly show up with no fear, knowing that our goal is just what you said, and you bring um, the magic is what I'm gonna say. Like for you to have so humbly, so authentically shown up and just say, you know what, I'm kind of scared too, but I'm but I'm coming. Put me in, coach.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, and I think it's wonderful to see enough people paying attention to this. No, I think there really is the possibility of change, and I really think also um, understanding that it's a long road. Which, earlier we were talking about some of the founders of Tabor and things, and then a few weeks back with John Lewis passing, it just really struck me how amazing those people are who have been working this for decades.
Mm,
And to some degree, to me, for everyone else, if we haven't been working it, just step in and honor their courage and commitment for the real
mm.
long run. um, and no, we won't be done by Christmas. This is
We won't be done by Christmas, but we will have a book done by
there you go.
Christmas. Just FYI, we have a video series done by Christmas. So that's the other thing I wanted to kind of to bring this up. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So basically, I'm sharing the flyer for the event on August 9th. Now I'm just curious. When you see this, what do you see? What do you see? What do you think when you see this? And be honest. First
Really impressed.
thoughts.
Well, I'm impressed with how many people you have participating. I think that's really great, and I also think it's great that I see what looks like a number of people from different walks of life. Some people I was looking through, I said I knew, like, okay, there's Patricia and some others I didn't know. I think that's great, but I also think, to your point earlier of um, broadening that circle, it's probably not as broad as it needs to be.
It's not. It's not. And so that's where we need your help. So again, consider this the official call to action. But what I love about this is, so if you can see at the top, session 3 It's focused. I mentioned session one focused on this establishing a case for change. Session two is really like what can we all do to drive change. This concept of telling our stories. Did I mention Brene Brown to you yet?
You might have. I'm familiar with who she is. I
So
didn't.
so
Yeah.
so one of the videos that we play as a part of the recaps, as a part of this movement, is when she says the stories that we own, we get to write the ending, and the stories we don't own us. And so during the
Mm,
second session, we talk about really giving people courage to tell their stories, all people. So you standing up and saying, you know what, I, I don't feel comfortable, but I'm here. The little league story, so cute.
I loved it when the inning ended before I had to bat. I was like, oh, thank goodness.
I hated when the ending ended before I had to bat. I got at least a base hit or two. I at least got a base hit in, and when I hit more than that, it was I hated that. So I love you, and what I love about this is so you said two things. So this is the community that's involved. Session at the end of session two, and actually at the end of session one, we talked about the importance of having allies engaged. I have a very clear strategic plan about the topics we want to address and cover in this book because it's basically laying out a roadmap on how do you really achieve racial equity and inclusion in business, education, wealth, and health. Each person that's listed at the bottom, I've already done videos with, and they're part of my highlight clips. There's tons of other people we've done videos with, but each session we do these highlights, and there's people whose voices come up, or there's a couple people I added. Who are going to be part of this deep, intensive exploration. So the faces for 9/9, I'm just going to focus on the event for 9/9. We're focusing on change. So the guy in the middle, his name is Keith Milner. Do I need to make
Hmm.
it bigger? Can you see it? So
Yeah.
Keith Milner, he he's going to be talking about change, and he's come to he's been a part of the National Black MBA Association as a consultant for many years. He does our president, our leadership team training, and he did a session a couple years ago that was on this concept of disruption, like disruptive change. So like if we're trying to be change agents, this is before all this racial equity and inclusion stuff, but just in general, right? People who are, talks about change and transformation and innovation, like Netflix, right? Netflix was a game changer, a disruptor when it came to Blockbuster and videos. Like
Yeah.
Blockbuster had an opportunity to say, we're going online too. We got more videos, we got more name recognition, but they didn't. So I'm not Amazon, but Netflix was basically able to take over. And so when these guys talk about change and what's necessary, there's some minor changes that can take place when you're trying to change a system. Other changes are kind of like, when you want to disrupt um, the negative parts of a system, right? We're not burning things down. Right, and I say that because this ally here, the beautiful Jennifer Sawyer, the one with the blue hair, she is an advocate extraordinaire. I cannot wait for you to hear her speak because she is a sister soldier. That's all I'm going to say. And she was actually introduced to me by this young girl at the bottom, Angela Lane, because she's an advocate for Angela. And I felt it was really important when Angela told me her story, have Jennifer tell her story, because a lot of times what we need is for people like you to talk about why you're engaged and how others should be engaged, and then have other advocates also, right, tell their story. And Angela has two other people that I couldn't fit on this chart, this one visual, who are part of this story for her. So the
Hmm.
session we're going to be talking about is focusing on change, champions. Each of us can be a champion, right? That looks different for each of us, but what that means to each of us, I'm going to ask you what these words mean to you in a second. This concept of courage, because you just showing up, it demonstrates courage. And we as human beings, often we aren't comfortable being uncomfortable. So it's courage is really this concept of how do we get past that initial feeling and just kind of step in. Accountability means at the end of the day, to your point, like your neighbors, if their house, their lawn, they don't have a lawnmower and their grass is high, or their paint's chipping and you got some extra paint and it's going to take your property value down too, pass along the lawnmower, right? Like just, lean in. So there's some accountability to the human race, right? Not to a black or to a white, but just to the human race. We're better than some of the things I think we allow to happen. So advocacy then comes in as the next point of like, what can we each do? You know, you see something, say something. And what is an ally? What is the definition of an ally as well? So a lot of these faces here, and definitely the people on the front top row, and many of the others, I have either videos or they've said some things that are part of the highlights that'll bring people forward. But these are the topics we're gonna cover on the 9th, which is why it's so important for you to help me infiltrate this conversation with as many white faces as possible. I'm also we're going to post this online. We got to figure out how to get as much publicity as possible. I paid someone out of my very limited budget of personal dollars to help me with a press release. Like I feel like it's now is the time, because 9/9 is the time. We got recaps from 7/7, great information, recaps from 8/8. And 9/9 is about bringing people together and hearing multiplicity of voices, answering questions. We're even going to do a 1 hour after this, 1 hour Q&A, because there's going to be a lot of information from all kind of places coming, and we want people to feel like they can get their questions answered, real questions. Mm-hmm. That's what's happening in 9/9. And 10/10, we got 3 sessions left after that. 10/10 is the I'm in by 10/10. Like at that point, we're saying we've had established a case for change. We identified that there's a need for change. We've talked about why and how that works for everyone. We're going to bring in this space for accountability to talk about that. By 10/10, we need some people to be in, because we're now got a 5 or 6 week intensive where we're going to formulate a deeper exploration and an opportunity for people to transform within that 5 or 6 week time frame. So not just these 1 month, once a month opportunities, but in order to really write this book, I have all the content, we have all the research, we have all the voices, but I need for some individuals to experience some deeper experiences as a bit of a cohort. So I'm bringing together a cohort of individuals to move forward as a part of the book. By definition, you're a part of it just because you've shown up, right? But we want as many white people engaged as possible with some one-on-one interaction, the ability to have a new black bestie and a new white bestie, because these relationships, are you with me? Is really what's going to allow people, it's one-on-one, people being able to connect. It's a many-to-many relationship, but through this one-on-one opportunity and through this cohort building. And then we have all these experts coming in talking about the psychology of change, right? The belief systems that we have. You can't do that in a webinar, right? We're going to bring the high-level concepts forward, but the real people who are willing to invest a little bit more time during 5 weeks, being able to write about their journey, like, you know, document, journal, whatever, and then be able to bring something forward that I think will help others in the future. Mm-hmm. So there will be a book produced in December. Wow. Another internationally best-selling book, I hope. Like my first one, Plug, Ignite Happiness.
I'm all good for a plug. Yeah.
You like that? Do you like that? Totally. And what's exciting about this journey, and what's exciting about the people that you saw on that flyer, is everyone's in. We all agree that there's something that we can all do to be a part of change.
So, for Andy, sure.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you. I've said a lot. I'll be quiet. Any comments before I ask you the next question?
No, go ahead. Yeah, I just don't say when I look at the flyer, I feel very like gulp of like I'm not worthy, because I know all those people have been in that space and done a lot for a long time. But on we go.
Okay, I think that's so interesting. I'm gonna share the screen one more time, because the other thing I wanted to share with you. Can you still see the flyer?
Yeah.
Other thing I wanted to share with you is some people are brand new.
Okay.
So Miss Robin Root James,
yeah,
she's like Traci. I'm a white older woman from Bellevue, and when I read a lot of the social media, people like hate us. Is what she said. She said, I feel like there's such hate for us, and I haven't done anything. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cute. I love that you said that. Thank you for so you know, we're bonding. We've decided we're gonna, because it's like it is for everyone. There's no space for hate. There's only love, but we all bring a different experience. So for her to be able to speak, you know, and share, Debrina Jackson-Gandy, Delana Elliott, they're new to this space. Angela Lane, relatively new, and Deborah Holland, new as well. So and we're 2 sessions deep. So it's not like you're behind. You're in. You're in. Good. And it doesn't matter where people get in, but my hope, and the reason I'm doing a push to say, like, now is the time, because by 10/10, we need people to be in. Like I'm in by 10-10. And so some of the corporate responsibility that we've been talking about, I need to make sure that people are aware that this is happening, aware of the opportunity, be clear that, hey, we got a group that's actually moving something forward and all we need is you. All we need is people with open heart and open mind who are willing to learn and grow together. That's really what this is about. But by 10-10, again, our goal is to now get a little bit more practical about the individual change, what we believe, what we can do differently. You get what I'm saying? Like it's a
Yeah.
transformative opportunity. What do you think about being involved in a deep transformative opportunity where you also get to bring your voice to a book which becomes a roadmap for others in generations to come? They're going to look back at this and say, this right here is what started the change. This right here is how we were able to lay out very clear roadmap for what we and each of us can do differently. There were so many faces I found myself in. I really related to what Andy said and what he felt. I really related to Miss Robin Root James, who's like, I never owned slaves. Why are you mad at me? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I sometimes think about that sort of thing. And then I just realize, well, that's actually not really the point. The point is, what can you do to drive things forward? And then just not taking for granted, maybe you didn't do a lot of things, but you probably had a lot of things that not necessarily everybody had. And I think just being conscious of the tailwind that you had in life that maybe you didn't really think about before. And the fact that, some people are getting a headwind and you kind of had tailwind. And I don't think people necessarily need to feel guilt or anything else around it, but just be aware of it and maybe think about how could you help other people have the same thing. That's really kind of, to me, what it's about.
Wow. That was deep. And just to clarify, Robin did not say I didn't own slaves. I was just saying white woman. I've heard that from other people. So just for the record, so she didn't say that. She just said, I don't know what to do, but I want to help. And I thought she would be perfectly representative of the average man or the average woman who is white, privileged, and wanting to engage in some way, you know what I mean? And I think it's going to be, I'm not expecting her to be a sister soldier, right? I'm expecting her to be Robin Root James. I'm expecting her to be who she is, and you to be. She's a #1 real estate agent in Bellevue, right? 1%. One of the 1%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think when I think about that too, people, and maybe it's because this is about people, maybe that's what makes this challenging is, very often we will step in and contribute to a cause, hurricane relief or something else that you will do, or people, oh man, that earthquake that hit people. You don't say, well, I didn't cause the earthquake. Well, okay. But maybe that's because this is with people, that it just feels different for people, where there are a lot of things I think people contribute time and effort and money to that they don't necessarily do it because they felt that they caused it or anything else. They just see the need and step in, maybe because this is about people and truly is very personal. That maybe that's the holdback. I don't know.
I love that. That was really deep. You're bringing it, Andy. Another home run. You're reading it. So I'm gonna ask you two other questions. Do you have time to go a little bit over?
Yeah.
Do you? So I'm gonna ask you two other questions. One of the questions was related to this concept of. Let me see. I think I want to use this term. I'm gonna get off the list because I don't want to. Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question that's gonna make me feel uncomfortable. Even more uncomfortable than when I got hit with the softball in the middle of my head. I'm still in. So, what do you think? Why do you think it is that it is so hard for Black people to say, here's the challenges that we experience, and then to try to get to be heard, to get to be seen. Like I changed the title of the book to How to Become Visible. And when you read my book, the book that I was just published in, Ignite Happiness, for the first time I actually tell my diversity and inclusion story. And I've never told the story before, so it was a very interesting experience, but it was so cleansing. And what I realized is I've interviewed like thousands of people, and it's always the same story. People don't feel, we talk about these issues in corporate America for Blacks include, you know, unconscious bias. Have you ever heard that term?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Unconscious bias is one of them. Unequal performance standards is the second one. Similarity bias, or kind of a lack of support structures, and then lack of CEO accountability. Those are the four things that our research has proven over the last 40 years, or the last 3 years, 2 years. Same issues, challenges have existed for Blacks in business. Like, why do we not have more Blacks? Why is the retention rate so low? It's all the same thing. And so when we use the terms that sound very academic, unconscious bias, like every company has absolutely trained their employees on unconscious bias. What they haven't trained their employees on is the impact when it happens, when unequal performance standards, when that challenge is experienced by a Black person. It can be traumatic depending on the situation, the circumstance, the outcome. Like the whole thing is different. So I've heard people say, when the first time I heard someone say it, I was like, wow. And then I was listening for it, and like, how to become visible, how to be heard. So I mean, we saw George Floyd die. Does everybody have to die? I mean, we saw George Floyd die on the side of the street. And so now it's like a wake up call. In business, it doesn't seem as intense, but it is. Like, right? Like, research proves that people who experience exclusion, lack of inclusion, those type of experiences, it shortens your life expectancy significantly. So it is a life or death situation. So I use this term and I call it corporate chokeholds. It's a corporate chokehold. Like, those four things from our research, I call them corporate chokeholds. So my part of our premise, and probably the hardest thing that white people can maybe digest, so I want to make you feel uncomfortable for a minute because I feel uncomfortable too. So because of those, stop corporate chokeholds. Like, stop those things. Like, if I had one thing to do, it's like, how do we stop the most traumatic of the things that are happening from happening when they're happening in the moment? So I just want to understand, like, what is it? What do you hear when I say stop corporate chokeholds, and you know the context that I'm referring to, which is why I basically had to trademark the term, because I don't want someone to turn it into something that it's not. It is very specific about four key challenges that research has proven, is a barrier for Blacks in business, and it has a little bit of an edge, intentionally, hopefully not too much of an edge, but it's really about, when I say stop corporate chokeholds, it's like how to become visible. How do you help these Black people to become visible and to be heard without dying on the vine? And you may not have the answer, and I'm okay with that. How does it make you feel? How do those terms make you feel? Don't feel like you have the answer,
Well,
because that's
it reminds me of, I remember having to read way a long time ago, Ralph Ellison, Invisible Man. And
yes.
and I remember reading that, and not, when I read it in high school or something, not really understanding it. I think maybe I do a little bit more now, or more recently. I read Ta-Nehisi Coates' book a couple years ago, and the hardest thing for me, I think, is trying to reach conclusions or an understanding about something I've never lived and experienced. And so it makes me super cautious about coming to a judgment or coming to an understanding, or thinking, okay, I think I can understand what that's like. I don't know that I actually can, because my experience coming into it is so profoundly different. So I think it's just attempting to be conscious of things like the unconscious bias, attempting to be conscious of, hey, you click with somebody in an interview, maybe that's that similarity bias, and all these other pieces coming through. But I think that whole piece of how to understand what someone else has gone through, that's lived a very different experience, that's the part that to me is really hard. And ultimately, though, I don't think you get to the solutions until you do. And particularly when it comes in a workplace with opportunities and other things, I think you need to get there. And I think the answer then is, it is about conversation in a wider circle, and doing that over and over and over again for a much longer period of time.
I love it.
But that's a super challenging question, and yes, it did make me incredibly uncomfortable.
Good, me too. I couldn't even hardly get it out.
But again, if you don't have that conversation, And then I think today, thinking again about the visibility, more specifically, um, when I think about what I should notice and why I notice it, um, if I don't notice anything, I'm blind, which I think is sort of Ralph Ellison's point, if I remember high school literature enough, of you're invisible. On the other hand, when does visibility turn to a profiling or a stereotyping? And so how do you find the point where you are understanding differences, but seeing individuals, not seeing groups, not being just blind, because things are different and that's a great thing, but then not putting people into boxes. Finding the ability to have that balance between you've just profiled or you've just completely overlooked, that's that super slippery fine edge that seems to me ultimately the way you can then take a look in a workplace and understand people for what they bring as individuals and how they can contribute. And I think that calibration is really tough.
Oh my God. You sound, once again, you sound like a plant. Did we plan this? Did we plan this?
Probably a fern, but yeah, no, I
Can,
understand your
can,
point.
can you testify that we did not plan any of
Nope,
this?
we just talked.
That was so good. So you just summarized. I'm so excited. Oh my goodness. You basically just summarized in that most profound way that you did exactly what this initiative is all about. That is the end goal. Those people who participate in that intensive, that basically it's going to be a 5 to 6 week, and again, you're not done. It's just the beginning. You know how I like to say that I'm going to light 100 suns. I want to light 1,000 suns that will then go out and light 1,000 more and 1,000 more. It's like you get an indoctrination. You get an immersion. You get to create relationships and partnerships that will last a lifetime. So we're going to do a combination of investing in you as individuals, having these buddy systems based on various likenesses and things that people decide they having some things in common, but also then having people that you decide you may have five things in common and you don't connect with someone. So within this community, we're creating a safe space. Everyone will be vetted, so there won't be any psychos involved, right? There'll be some level of positive psychology that's required, but we also want people who are kind of like skeptics, because we really need everybody. We need all the voices, right? We don't want any um, people who are going to be negative or squash the voices of others. But I am very comfortable and confident if we brought in, it needs to be a wide variety of individuals, kind-hearted, open-hearted, who are willing to learn. And ultimately the goal is to do exactly what you said, which is the reason I was very intentional about the 3 pillars that we're using to build this initiative. Positive psychology, adaptive leadership. Adaptive leadership helps to enable exactly what you said. Not by itself. When you combine it with positive psychology and you combine it with self-directed learning, those are very deep research-based initiatives that I have done deep analysis and pulled in all the best of those 3 things, because you need people to have a heart and a mind to actually want to do this work, to want to go deeper, to build relationships, to want to find the line, to want to practice, right? And so I'm going to give you one of the answers, and I want to get your thoughts about this, and this will be the last thing. This will be the absolute last thing. Is that okay?
Yeah, I like a test
Okay.
with answers. Yeah.
So one of the things that we're doing to get there, to help people to do what you just said, balance that fine line. And I really appreciate you saying that I don't have the answer because I haven't had that experience. Part of the reason we're going to create this intensive is because we're going to give you some immersion into a culture and around people that you've never would have had before, with some opportunity, when I'll talk to you more about that, but really to, Brene Brown, when she talks about perspective, she talks about the 3 P's: privilege, perspective, and power. We bring videos from her, and I'm actually inviting her to join us too, but that's a whole nother conversation. But this concept of perspective, she says, people like to say, put on the perspecticles of someone else, right? And she said, you can't. Your perspective is soldered to your face, but what you can do, when she describes how do you then, create empathy, for another so that you are able to connect with them as an individual, hear their stories, and believe them when they share it. She talked about, your truth and my truth are going to be different. Believe me as I share it, not as it would be from your eyes or through you, but believe that what I share with you is my truth. What do you think about that concept?
I think it's really critical. That is exactly when I read a year or so ago the Ta-Nehisi Coates book, Between the World and Me. I read it on a long airplane ride, and it's 180 pages or so. So I'm like sitting there playing. I'm going to read this book, and I'm reading it, and I found at points I'm sort of arguing with it. And as I'm reading, I'm like, well, how can I argue with this man about his take on his life? And it's just that kind
Mm,
of thing of how how can you do that if that's his take on his life? That's his take on his life and his experiences of people that he says are like him. Now, you may find somebody else who grew up a block down because I don't really agree with that guy. Fine, but how can you can't argue with other people when they tell you about their experience. And that's, I think, unfortunately, a tendency that we all have. And you
right.
just have to realize you just can't do that. And that's where I love the idea of sort of you think you're putting on the perspective and then oh no, you're wrong. You can't really do that.
You can't. You
You
can't.
can't really do that. So I think it gets back to that piece of just um, accept what you're hearing and listen and accept what you're hearing.
Yes. And the other piece I need to make sure you're aware. This is not about white people coming in and listening to some black people tell their stories either. It is about each person in this community learning and growing together, because there really is this a shared experience that we create. We co-create the life that we live. We co-create culture and business based on how we respond to each other. Me understanding more about your perspective, how you feel, is equally as important as you hearing black stories. So it has to be
Sure.
50-50 black stories and white stories. And right now we are well shy of some white stories. Okay. So just FYI, you also have a number of black people who are saying, I really would love to connect with um not just white. I'm saying white people because you happen to be white, but white and other non-black. How
Sure.
about that? And just to be clear, all black people don't think the same thing either. A lot of black people, like Tracy, nobody even, full disclosure, no lie. The reason I told you about this whole corporate chokehold thing, I had some black individuals that were part of this initiative earlier on. I was interviewing them as a part of my show, my weekly show, before I started the official webinars. And one of them was so engaged until Microsoft said, oh, we're going to, provide funding for these businesses and organizations. And he's like, are you sure we want to use the term corporate chokeholds? I don't know if I feel comfortable with that anymore. I'm going after those Microsoft dollars. And I thought, wow, okay. And I said, well, he said, because they're had this whole list of things that they were doing. And I said, you know, diversity is the easy part of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Bringing more black people into a business by paying them more money is the easy part of the equation. Just like the
Yeah.
fund that you guys are building, you and I have that conversation, right? If you have money, giving money is easy. If you have money, your responsibility then is to invest in a different way so that, right, you're able to drive true systemic change. And so
Yeah.
one of the things, if you know Satya Nadella, do you happen to know Satya? Do you know anyone who knows Satya?
I, I, I do not have the pleasure.
Okay,
Although,
well, I think he is one of the most amazing CEOs out there. He wrote a book called Hit Refresh. And when you have leaders like him, who it was part of my transition out of Microsoft, that's a whole nother story. But he's like an amazing leader. You could tell that he believes in the right thing. When he speaks, I think he's amazing, right? Without a doubt.
yeah,
I want to have him and some of his team as a part of this equation, because honestly, when he said we're going to bring in 50% more black people, I cringed. I was like, oh God, does he really think that's the answer? And then people say that, CEOs are very protected. They don't, people around them don't. Sun, the way it's coming into this room is really, really weird. Hold on 1 second. Sorry. Anyway, Um, but the way, the way they bring in, or the way they have conversations is just, now I'm probably putting myself in the dark, but that's okay. Um, okay, let's see if that's better. Okay, that's a
Yeah,
little
there you
bit
go.
better. This is freaking me out. I'm like, what is happening? Anyway, so again, I think Sati is amazing, but I also think that, when people say, I'm going to give money, I'm going to bring in more Black people, and not think about how do you create a more equitable and inclusive environment where everyone can thrive. I have hundreds and hundreds of stories of people who have experiences that are less than optimal, not just at Microsoft, but in general. It is it across the board. So if any company can do it, I think Microsoft can. So I'm giving him props
Yeah.
because they talk about growth mindset. You know what growth mindset is? If you read,
I
there's a
think
book
so, but
called Growth Mindset by
I won't
Carol
claim to be
Dweck.
that.
So
Okay.
Carol Dweck. So basically, it's this concept of, um, it's basically when you make a mistake, it's learning. It's basically acknowledging that, anyone can grow and learn. No one knows everything. So we bring in growth mindset. I have to add that to my list of things that that's one of our, it's part of my conditioning. I didn't even know what growth mindset was. I grew up with the growth mindset as a Black girl in a poor area. And my mom basically said, I naturally did really well in school. Praise God for that. Um, but she actually said, anything you want to do, you can learn. I spent more time in the library. I was like the geeky girl that spent all the time in the library, right? I learned how to type. I learned how to do things. I traveled the world through books. Like it was my, like I knew that I could. I rode horses before I ever saw a horse. Through the tapes, etc. So the growth mindset is like, I know that's kind of like we all can grow and learn and grow. So that's the other aspect of this, is being able to also acknowledge that the solutions that we think are the solutions may not be the right solution. So I know you have this other group. What was that group called? This broader community group, the leadership corporate something or
Oh,
other.
there are a couple here. There's Challenge Seattle, and then the Washington Roundtable, which are kind of, I'll call them corporate groups here of
Right.
CEOs and other leaders and things. And I know, they are working on all these initiatives. What I don't know is how can we bring more of the conversation to those, to that work, as opposed to sort of things that I think can fall into a bit of the um, PowerPoint blueprint and then metrics you track later, which maybe leads to some of the results you're talking about, where people, yeah, you bring people in, but then they don't stay and they don't thrive because the environment didn't really change.
Exactly. So that's the true work. That's the work
Mhm.
that we're doing. You have been amazing. I just wanted you to know how grateful I am. If you had to speak to Challenge Seattle, mom, in her living room, if you're speaking to allies, advocates, individuals, even Black people, because we don't have all, this isn't for everyone, by the way.
Yeah, for
Just to
sure.
be clear, this is not going to be for everyone. This is for those people who are willing to step up to the plate, right? This is a Andy Wappler, new and improved, no longer in little league, in the big leagues, stepped up to the plate, already hit a home run. This is for those people who are willing to play hard, even when there's a bit of a fear factor, would you say? A bit of a
Sure.
nervousness about the outcome, but I got to do something. Talk to us. I'm going to give you the last couple minutes of this interview to just speak directly to those individuals who might be listening. Let's talk to executives first. I'm going to give you three different conversations. Talk to Satya Nadella right now. What would you say to him? Why should he get engaged? Why should he not focus on just bringing people in? Why should he do something different, like engage in this type of initiative? This particular initiative. Let me not say this type of initiative. Let me say this particular one. Why do you think this might be a good experience?
Well, part of it to me, I think for people is, we're in a time that feels there's just a lot of strife, and it's just a very difficult time. And I think people are hungry to find a way to make things better and make a difference. And to me, this is just a real human to human way you can make a difference in the community. Um, it's a space that I think if you can make the difference, it can make a difference for a long time with a lot of lives. So you kind of have that element of it. And then I think if you just thought about it from a business standpoint to people, um, our world's becoming increasingly diverse. The demographics are different. If your company wants to be successful and have the talent pool it wants, if it wants to connect to the customers that it wants, you better do this. You better do this. If you just think about it from just some ROI standpoint, some MBA ROI standpoint, you've got that. So to me, it's both. It's a chance to maybe get intact with something and touch on something that feels better at a time that feels really tough. And then it's also a chance, if you're running a business, your business is at real risk if you're not stepping into this. You're not going to get the employees you want, and you face customers not being connected or not wanting to be your customer anymore. So you have both kind of the head and the business side, and then the heart of how do you want to be, what kind of person you want to be.
Wow. That's a drop the mic moment. I'm done. I got nothing else to say. That was awesome. That was a slam dunk, home run. Andy Wappler in the house. Thank you so much, Andy, for this conversation. I
You
look
bet.
forward to having you back. I look forward to having you live on 9/9, and we'll talk more then. Thank
Looking
you
forward
so
to it. Thank
much.
you,
This is
Traci.
Traci Harrell, and it's bigger than me, baby.